So I've had high-pitched tinnitus in both ears for about 15 years. And then in the last probably 6 to 8 months, I've gotten like a whooshing noise in my right ear only. I came to Barefoot because it had been recommended to me. I'm a longtime sufferer of TMJ, which is jaw pain. So I've had tightness in my jaw for a long time. I also have tinnitus, which is ringing in my ears, and my wife has been going to Barefoot for about a year with a lot of success, and so she thought they'd be able to help me with it. Barefoot had a little bit of ideas that there might be, some possibility of improving it because the jaw and the ear are so connected.
So Jay came in with really 3 main concerns. He came in with ringing in both his ears, but his right ear he had the very low pitch ringing and then another sound which he couldn't really articulate too well, kind of like a swishing vibratory type of noise. He also says that his jaw was very tight and his jaw would snap once in a while, and he would suffer from headaches with this.
Yeah, I was actually diagnosed with TMJ by my primary care doctor years ago, and he kind of diagnosed me with, I guess, like anxiety or depression at the same time. So I ended up trying an antidepressant med at the same time, and it actually did. I mean, at the time when the TMJ started, I'd had a headache for like 30 days, and it lifted that, but that was really the extent of it. And then as for the tinnitus, I'd had tests to make sure there was no hearing damage, and at that point, I was basically told like, well, there's no hearing damage, get a white noise machine. Yeah. So that was pretty much the extent of it.
So let's review the anatomy of our jaw very quickly. So right here we have a muscle called the masseter. There's 2 branches of it. There's a deep layer and a superficial layer, meaning you can feel this on yourself. If we remove this muscle right here is called the temporalis muscle, and this actually attaches right to your mandible or your jaw. In this picture here, you have a really good visualization of this is where the jaw or the TMJ joint is, and this canal right here is where your ear is. And as we move a little bit more into the face and around the joint right here, these are muscles, again, involved in mastication. So these are your lateral pterygoids. And again, they directly connect to the joint line. And this is as if we're looking inside of the face. And right here, this is your medial pterygoid muscle. And what's very interesting about this is right up here, this is the joint of your jaw. And right behind it, you have this little nerve right here. And this is called the auricular temporal nerve. So this is a nerve that innervates your temple here and some of your ear. So you can see if there's tension or adhesion and this muscle is not working correctly, as well as this joint not working correctly, it can start to irritate this nerve, and this nerve can start to cause some type of ringing in your ear as well.
I think for me, I have a lot of chronic stress issues, which is not uncommon, and it just all goes to my jaw. It's like some people carry it in their back, like I carry it here, and so it can cause me headaches if I'm not careful, but it also just causes a lot of tension, and the muscles in my face are just held really tight. So I probably am not the most extreme case in the world, but it was kind of just a source of low-level discomfort always. I don't grind my teeth at night to my knowledge, but I snap my jaw as I'm going to sleep, it's almost like as I'm sleeping, it's right before sleep, I'll kind of slam it shut.
So there is one more thing we need to talk about when talking about jaw dysfunction and tinnitus, or somatic tinnitus, which is ringing in your ears. And it's kind of a purple elephant that sits in the corner, and it's stress management. We found that a lot of people who suffer from TMJ and or tinnitus, a question that I always ask them is, do you feel heard? And that might not be your most conventional question, and people ask me, why do you ask me that question? And it's simply because statistics have shown that people who are not able to articulate truly how they feel, or they are unable to express themselves freely, what do we do as people of society? We have to close our mouths. We end up not being able to articulate ourselves, and we need to keep our mouths shut. When our mouths are shut and we don't want them to be shut, we tend to bite down. And when we're biting down, guess what? We're engaging our muscles of our jaw. doing this for long periods of time, guess what? You're gonna form adhesion in the muscles of your jaw. So it's very important to, when you are suffering from TMJ and or tinnitus, you simply ask yourself, am I stressed out? Am I able to articulate myself to the point where I feel like I'm actually being heard? It's one thing to speak, it's another thing to be heard. And with 95% of my TMJ patients, there is an emotional component to it, to treating the TMJ.
No, I wouldn't say I had any skepticism. I came in kind of knowing how Barefoot works. I expected that they would probably have questions about, you know, my lifestyle, and I had a feeling they were going to ask me questions too about, you know, what am I doing to manage stress. So I don't think I was skeptical. I think I came in with hopes of improvement in the jaw. Tinnitus is really complicated, so I didn't necessarily have any huge hopes of improving it, but I thought it was worth exploring while I was there for the jaw. It wasn't just the jaw. He was also working on my neck. So like in the beginning, I did a lot of basically like, I guess, mobility tests where they would turn me that way and this way and kind of pivot me every direction I would go. And the results were a lot worse than I thought. I think I thought I had more flexibility than I did. And so it was a combination of a lot of treatments on the neck, as well as, you know, treatments of the muscles inside the jaw.
So we're on visit 9 now with Jay, and Jay is about 50% better. He has that second noise in his right ear has completely resolved, and the ringing, that the somatic tinnitus which he had is so faint that he has to really concentrate to even notice that it's there. He hasn't had a headache since we started treatment, and his overall neck function has increased by over 50%.
In the jaw, I'd say I have seen improvement. Discomfort was probably at like a 5 or 6 when I came in. I'd say now it's probably like a 1. The neck treatments, sometimes it was almost like a massage. Like some of that was not painful. Sometimes Joe did a little bit of scraping on the neck, so that was a little more painful. The jaw is the big daddy of the treatments, so it was pretty painful. In my case, I had a little bit of an asymmetry. My left side was not as bad as my right side. So in general, you know, it's the application of a pretty strong force to those muscles inside the jaw to get rid of those knots. And consistently, the right side was a lot more painful. So it was painful but quick. And the thing I'd say about Joe that is special is he's just such a fun guy to be around that you're like making jokes as you're wincing in pain. So it's, I don't know, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, because you weren't just like in a torturous situation. You're talking with a nice person.
At this point in care, what we're going to do with Jay is we're going to start to spread out his treatments a little bit. We don't need to see him twice a week anymore, and we're going to let the tests and how his jaw is feeling and also how he's managing his stress dictate when Jay needs to come back moving forward.
I do think, because I framed it in terms of discomfort rather than pain, you know, and I have had chronic pain in my life in other areas, but this probably wasn't to the level where it was so distressing that having it released is like this off switch. So I think for me, it was more just like a subtle improvement. And I think probably like the bigger gift of the whole process is the fact that I already kind of knew that that's why I was carrying it, but to see, you know, he did a diagnosis and was able to actually confirm, like, yeah, your muscles actually really are, you know, in a pretty bad state. So to know that because I'm carrying that stress there, it was actually essentially causing that much damage to my body, it was a little bit of a reality check of like, oh, this isn't just like a theoretical thing. Like, I actually am really like clenching all day. So it was more just, I think the gift was, it's fixed. So the damage that has been kind of accrued has been fixed. But I also have a little bit more like of a reality check of not letting it get to that situation in the future. I think I'd pretty much recommend everybody come into Barefoot. Like, I've definitely, you know, the best advocates are other customers. So like we've already, you know, I was brought in by an existing patient. We've brought in other people already, and it's like I've seen people come in with way worse situations than I came in and get relief pretty quick. So based off of what I've seen, it's really promising. I think it's also very different from just what else is out there. There's chiropractic, there's physical therapy, like they all have their place, but I feel like Barefoot it has a unique approach that I haven't seen anywhere else. Oh, I think the culture of Barefoot is, I don't know, it almost feels like an oasis. I started going there kind of as the pandemic was starting to lift in New Jersey, the restrictions were lifting, so they were some of my first, I'd say in-person kind of good experiences with, aside from just close friends and family. And so it actually really helped. It was almost like sometimes they'd ask me like, is there anything we can help you with this week? And I'd say just honestly coming in to be able to chat and kind of have that human connection was like the value to me in a lot of cases. It's not a traditional, medical practice. It's a community, and I think it's full of very real people. So every time I went there, I was basically given a nugget of something to think about, something to work on. I was never forced. It was, it wasn't like, here's your diagnosis, you need to go do this. It was more like, from one adult to another, these are some things that could help. This is what's going on. And at that point, like, the ball's in your court. But I felt like there was this expectation that it's like they're gonna help and they're gonna really be like a good partner, but you have to also take some accountability for the things in your life that might be exacerbating, the pain, which is kind of unique.